Today's webinar is about time management. I'm Dana Zivkovich with the Friendly Lawyers Association. The Friendly Lawyers was organized as a collaborative social network specifically for lawyers who run solo and small firm law offices in the Chicago area. We host these webinars to help you figure out your law practice management challenges. And today I'm happy to introduce Paul Unger. He's with Affinity Consulting. Paul's an attorney and a technology consultant. Affinity Consulting helps lawyers manage their law practice management challenges and answers questions and provides solutions nationwide. So with that, we're going to start with Paul. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you, Dana. I just turned on my video there, and hopefully you can see me. And Dana, I don't know if you're going to disable your video now. Okay, awesome, yay. All right, wonderful. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending this. Thank you if you're watching a replay. My name is Paul Unger. The topic today is Taming the Digital Chaos. Let me tell you very quickly a little bit about me. I'm Paul. I am a lawyer, recovering lawyer, we'll say, from Columbus, Ohio. When I'm not speaking, coaching, writing reports, I can usually be found at home, cooking, gardening, running, or playing fetch with my puppy Amenadiel. My passion is teaching lawyers how to use technology and how to automate their practices using a variety of software tools. A couple books that are out. One that is very relevant to today is the one on the right, Tame the Digital Chaos, on time, task, email, and distraction management. That brings us to today. I am here to talk to you about time management, in particular, with a twist and centered around the challenges that we're going through currently with COVID, and half of us, being at home, half of us being in the office, or maybe even some of us with one foot in the office, one foot at home. But it's crazy times. There's no question about it. According to this study, which is actually a couple years old, we are bombarded by the equivalent of 174 newspapers of data per day. That's insane. That's an insane amount of data. We call it infomania, information overload. You combine the technology that we get through email and instant messaging with the 24-hour news network, everything going on with the pandemic, and then of course the new challenges from the pandemic, working from home, homeschooling, and such, and of course social media, and it really leaves us pretty exhausted. Many days, and especially when we add in the challenges that we have from our practices, right? Which we live in a hair on fire world. So the very technology that was designed to help us do more, bill more, go home early, that isn't the case, right? We know the benefits of technology generally, how software applications have been developed to help us do those type of things and perform tasks. But, is technology really our servant, or are we a servant to technology? Technology provides an enormous amount of interruptions during the course of the day, and it does leave us, it definitely does leave us in a state of being unfocused, and some days overwhelmed and a fog. So that's what I want to talk to you about today, and as well as showing some of those benefits of technology with specific applications. And the ones that we're going to focus on today are Outlook primarily, and Windows-based features, because statistically 95% of you are in a PC environment using Windows and Outlook. But that said, if you use Gmail, if you use Apple Mail or some other ecosystem, don't fret, because the materials actually cover both in some instances and some features. And if for some reason I don't cover something for Gmail or Apple or something else, please feel free to reach out to me. And at the end, I'll put up my email address, and I won't put you on a mailing list or anything else. So I want it to be as practical as possible for you. So please feel free to reach out with any questions. I'm going to keep it simple, and you need to keep it simple too. So don't try to boil the ocean. I'd recommend that you start a list, an action items list, and actually write down some things that resonate with you as I say them, and then try to execute on them, maybe one item or a week or every 2 weeks. And I know that might sound small to you, but think about in 6 months, if you wrote down 20 things and in 6 months you're still doing 80% of those things, that is massive success. So, if you try to execute all 20 of them next week, chances are you're trying to boil the ocean, and we tend to fail. But do what you can, and just don't try to do too much at one time. Focus on what you. We're going to focus on what you own as well, and I'm going to show it. So please don't worry. I'm not going to stay in PowerPoint the whole time. We're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to get our hands dirty, and I'm going to show Outlook and step-by-step instructions. So with that said, let's dive in. Lawyers, well, I'm just going to say legal professionals in general get interrupted every 2 to 3 minutes. And the average American business worker gets interrupted about every 5 to 6 minutes. So that is, again, we live in a hair on fire world, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. And love it or hate it, I guess we should be appreciative of it, because right now, especially with so much economic uncertainty, that's a good thing that we're able to have work and pay our bills. So what that means, though, is we need a methodology to deal with all of the interruptions and the tasks generally that come in from the interruptions that we have. So let's talk about those, and let's actually, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure that you can see the instruction that I provide up here too. So the concept that I want to talk about right now is something actually similar to attention deficit disorder, ADD, but it's called ADT. And ADT is environmentally induced, and it is what occurs mostly during the once your day gets started, and it's that fog that is in our head from that infomania and that information overload. But it's technology induced, and it's a worldwide epidemic, quite frankly. It's not unique to the legal profession, but I'd say it's multiplied in the legal profession because of the amount of work that we handle and the fires that we have to put out, and they're usually of an urgent nature. It's why you underperform. It's why very smart people underperform. It's why the people that you hire underperform. And so I want to talk about how to deal with attention deficit trait and how to combat that. Before we do, let me frame the issue a little bit more. Microsoft did studies back in 2007, and they found that it took 15 minutes to return back to work following an electronic-based interruption. They were studying their computer programmers. And I know what some of you are thinking, well, wait a minute, you just told me I get interrupted every 2 or 3 minutes, and if it takes me 15 minutes to return back to the work I'm performing, how do I get anything done? And that's exactly the problem. And now the only exception to that is when we have, an urgent situation on our plate and a deadline, that is an hour away or something like that. I call that 11th hour mode. When we're in 11th hour mode, it doesn't take us 15 minutes to return back to the work because we're in a crisis mode, right? So adrenaline kicks in, boom, we have laser focus. And it's amazing how much work we can get done and how focused we are when we have to block we absolutely have to block everything else out because we have no choice. If we don't, there's going to be a major problem. So it's like, we step up in the 11th hour and boom, we perform. The problem is that that's not a healthy place to be 24/7, right? It's not a healthy place to be. And it's actually a dangerous place to be because you may be doing something literally at 11 o'clock at night, but the rest of the world isn't available. And we need to reach people for answers sometimes. And we can't call an expert, or we can't call, somebody at 11 o'clock at night and get an answer. So then we might get into some trouble. So we need to be careful with that. Now, what's really fascinating is the number was 15 minutes for decades. If we go back to the 60s and 70s, we know that the multi-line telephone was big technology back then. And following that type of electronic-based interruption, it was 15 minutes. So it was 15 minutes for decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the early 2000s. And then actually over the last 5 years, that number has creeped up to 23. So lots of theories about why we're doing long-term damage to our brains. We are rewiring our brains by all of this computer information. Whatever the case, and nobody knows for sure, but whatever the case, what we do know for sure is the problem's not getting any better. The problem is getting worse. So again, we need a methodology to deal with the madness, and we need some boundaries as well. We need some healthy professional boundaries. And the good news is everybody realizes this. So we're starting to see a dialing down of certain expectations, right? And a forgiveness. Like, for instance, we all know that sometimes email lands in somebody's spam filter. So when somebody doesn't respond, we tend to say, we get a little aggravated, but we tend to say, oh, okay, well, maybe they didn't get that, and it went into a spam filter. And so let's reach out to them again, maybe by phone. And there's a little bit of forgiveness, right? And courts realize this. And so things are adjusting, and I think attitudes are adjusting. Maybe not some of our clients' attitudes, but many of them are. Okay. Now, Microsoft did more studies. They fed 4 interruptions per hour in this study, and they found that 40% never returned to the task they were performing at the time of the interruption. And the harder the task, the more likely it was that they would never return to the task. 60% of the interruptions they would get come from the very devices that we love so much, like our smartphones. And so I kind of have a love-hate relationship with technology in general. I mean, I absolutely love it. It's why I did it. But from a distraction perspective, it's some days I definitely do hate it. We lose about 2.5 hours a week looking for lost documents and emails. So there's some things that we can do about that. We'll talk about that a little bit when we get to email management and some technology there that can help with this particular problem. So I want to talk about just briefly the concept of multitasking and what we do to ourselves when we try to multitask. The reality is we don't multitask. We single task, and we task switch. The human brain is incapable of multitasking. In fact, a small percentage of us, most studies agree that less than 1% of the human population are what we call super taskers. And you could Google that phrase, and you can actually take a test, a couple tests online. You can find pretty easily to see if you're a super tasker. I'm not. I'm absolutely terrible at multitasking or task switching. But there's a real cost to task switching. According to this study, there's a 40% loss of productivity, and that's because even though it takes seconds to switch from here to here, it's what happens after the switching and getting our brain where it needs to be and focusing and immersing ourselves in the topic that results in the loss of productivity. So we know that women actually super task or task switch better than men. I'm not surprised by that a bit. But the reality is we all stink at it, and we need to stop trying to be multitasking superheroes. Now, the problem of juggling, many cases, many problems in a single day, that's not going away. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about proactively trying to single task, meaning you've got 2 monitors up on your screen. Let me give you a very simple example. On one monitor, you're doing mental gymnastics and writing analysis. Maybe even on another monitor, maybe you have 2 or 3 or 4. I have 4 monitors in my system here, but on one monitor you have Outlook maximized all day, and statistically, I'll tell you, 60 to 70% of you do. And so this is a raise your right hand and repeat after me moment. Just because I have 2 monitors doesn't mean I have to have anything on the other monitor that I'm not using. In fact, Outlook should be minimized most of the day, and you should be more deliberate about when you check email instead of checking it. Statistically, we know you check email 74 times a day. If we put a screen recorder on your computer, that's the number of times we switch over to our email during the course of the day. Or if we leave it up all day long, right? So on one screen, you're doing mental gymnastics. On another screen, think about what's happening. You have bomb, fire, fire, bomb landing in your inbox every 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And that's like voluntarily placing yourself in a nursery full of screaming children while you're trying to write a brief or write a speech or a presentation or an opening statement. That's just absolutely insane. It's a terrible idea. And so what that means is we've got to balance, right? The balance being responsive to our clients and our colleagues via email. And so we have to be reasonable about how is checking email once an hour going to get you there? And some of you, the answer is yes. Some of you, it's every 30 minutes. Some of you, it's every 2 hours. For me, I aim for 5 times a day. And that gives me enough time to be super responsive to the people that need my attention. And we can create through technology, we can create special notifications for very important people. So if we turn those notifications off, which I do recommend, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, we can create a special notification for those 2 or 3 or 4 really important clients or a partner or a mentor or something like that. So you can decide, you know what, I'm going to drop what I'm doing and I am going to, take care of that. So, but we need to limit those number of interruptions that we get so we can focus. And that's really important. Think about this. Some of you may be old enough to remember the early 90s, late 80s and earlier when we didn't have this type of technology interruption with emails and instant messaging. And so back then it was the telephone. And we didn't answer every single call that came in as we were writing and doing work. In fact, we had people screening calls, and then they would interrupt us for those urgent ones. So we need to try to mimic that a little bit, right? And then create exceptions through technology, through like a VIP list in Outlook or Apple or whatever ecosystem you're using. I'm going to show you how to do that. But generally, we need to stop trying to multitask. It's really doing us a disservice. In fact, it's not making us dumb, but it's making us appear dumb. According to this study, King's College 2005, they administered an IQ test on 3 groups of people. The first group have no interruptions and we'll say is otherwise normal. The second group were fed electronic-based interruptions. And the third group were fed no interruptions, but they were stoned. and so the first group scored the best, but the group that was stoned actually scored better than the group that wasn't stoned, but were fed electronic-based interruptions. They scored 2 to 3 points higher on their IQ test. And that's not really surprising, right? It keeps me from looking at my phone every 2 seconds, right? So if you can't get from your chair to your door without looking at your phone, you might have an addiction. And the reality is you do, right? You do. Every time you see your name in a text message or a social media post, we get a little dose of dopamine. And that dopamine is, if you've studied addiction, you know about dopamine. It's a highly addictive chemical that our body releases. It's a feel-good chemical. It's that instant kind of gratification chemical. It can be good too. So, but we should know, and we should be aware of there's a chemical process that's contributing to our, I'll call it bad behavior, and our addiction to our phone and our addiction to checking email. Now, if you're laser focused, let me give you an example. Saturday morning, you get up and you get your list out, right? And you write a list out of all the errands you're going to run. And the first one on your list is the grocery store. So you go to the grocery store, you get your stuff, you put your groceries in your car, you come in, you get your list out, and what do? You get your pen and you cross it off, right? And you feel good. That's dopamine. It feels amazing when you cross stuff off on your to-do list. Then you're driving down the street and you're headed to the bank, and then you see the pet store, and you think, oh, I didn't write that down on my list, but I need to go. So you go in, you get your pet food, and you come out, and of course it's not written on your list. So what do? You write it down, and then what do? You cross it off. And why? You don't even show your list to anybody, but you want credit for it, right? And so you throw that away, but you want credit for it. We do that. I did that just the other day at the office. I had my list of 5 or 6 things that I wanted to do that day. And I looked at it at the end of the day and I got one of them done, but I got 10 other things done. So I wrote those 10 other things and I wrote them down and I crossed them off. If you want credit for it, it feels good. You want a sense of accomplishment. So dopamine can be good in certain circumstances. So just be aware that there's that chemical process that's contributing to our addiction to these interruptions. It will help you combat that particular problem. Now let's talk about specifically combating ADT, attention deficit trait. We really do it on 4 fronts. I'm going to talk about 3. I combine the first 2, workplace and personal health. And those are really two separate things. We'll talk about those here in a second. Attention management skills, and then a time, task, and email management methodology. Now, the first 2 are really dealing with digital detox and achieving focus. Okay, and so again, workplace and personal health, and attention management skills. That is dealing with the distractions. Okay, and getting focused. The third one is really a methodology to stay organized, and we're going to spend a good time really in number 2 and 3. Okay, so on the workplace front and personal health front, let me just give you an example. If you work in an environment where there's drama and there's toxicity and distrust, and people don't understand their role and what should be priority. Those are the things that go into that really go into workplace health. And in particular, I would say there are 2 books I would recommend if this interests you. I'm not an expert in this topic. Patrick Lencioni, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He's absolutely fantastic. I've read his book. I read his book over 20 years ago, and I read it every few years. It's absolutely wonderful. He's kind of the godfather of organizational health. And then a more modern organizational health expert is Simon Sinek. And you could YouTube Simon and find all sorts of really good short videos online. He has a couple books out. This is his latest. And this is just, again, about workplace health and trust. On the personal health front, let's talk about that briefly, and in particular, how it fits in with what's going on with the pandemic. The first issue that I want to talk about there is sleep. And there are all sorts of studies and articles right now, not studies, but articles that have been released that talk about the problems that we're going through with lack of sleep. In fact, just even on social media this past week, it was amazing that there were probably a half dozen people who posted about their inability to sleep and their insomnia. And so a lot of people are struggling right now for a variety of reasons. Politics going on is just incredibly divisive, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. Everybody believes they're absolutely right, and it's exhausting. It's 100% exhausting, and social media is exhausting. The pandemic, the stress, the stress of staying safe, the stress of keeping our elderly parents safe, and not being able to visit them as much. It's resulting in a lot of bad health issues, in particular with sleep. Sleep causes all sorts of problems, and it's dominoes in a terrible direction very fast. And so all of these problems are absolutely wrong, or they are wrong, but they're absolutely terrible. And in particular, as it relates to our ability to work during the course of the day, it impairs our focus. It leaves us on many days paranoid and independent of anxiety and blood pressure and everything else. So we need to figure out how to make sure that we're getting an adequate amount of sleep. And if you need assistance with that, I would reach out to a doctor. I would engage in meditation, mindfulness. You need to take some proactive steps to make sure that you're getting enough sleep. Think about digital detox as balance, not about going off grid, but about balance, and setting boundaries. And this is probably the easiest way. to digital detox throughout the course of your work week and your work day. Of course, you could go off grid, and that's a beautiful thing when you can do that, but we can't be off grid all the time. So we need to learn how to set healthy boundaries. So one way that we could do this is screen scheduling. And so I'm not, by the way, I'm not telling you, let me just pull the first bullet point here. I'm not saying don't do any social media between 8 and 5. That might not even be realistic for some of you. Some of you have to engage in networking, and that's your primary way. So, so don't, you need to fill in these numbers yourself, in other words, okay? No devices after 9 o'clock, all right? So again, you adjust that. Maybe you have a client in Australia, and that's just, you can't do that. So you adjust, you fill in the number yourself. Now, bear with me 1 second. I'm just gonna turn off my video, and I need to change out my microphone because I have a battery issue. So I'm going to keep talking here. The next one is like maybe no email after 7 p.m. Again, you fill in the blank, and you decide what is appropriate for you and what's going to work for you. Phone-free food. Okay, so that's a good one for your family. And track your phone time. Absolutely track your phone time on any mobile device. You can now use on an iPhone. There's a screen time app that you could use that that will limit your time. And I actually did that. What I did was from social media 5, and so all right. Now let's see here. I'm going to switch microphones real quick, and so hopefully you all can hear me. If you can't hear me for some reason, please please say something in the chat. And all right, okay. So it seems like we're still good. Think about also a social media fast. With a social media fast, good, thank you, Dana. For a social media fast, you know, I'd like to, I've done this for a period of 30 days. And that I found that to be quite liberating. You might not be able to do that right now with the election going on. I know that most lawyers are political creatures as well. But think about that maybe after the election or an appropriate time. And it's actually quite liberating to do. You'll be amazed how clear your head is and how much of a better mood you're in when you don't get sucked into a political debate and get your blood pressure and get all worked up. Let's shift gears and talk about attention management skills. Okay, so we talked about workplace health, personal health. Think about eating too. Eating and exercise is an enormous issue. You know, we can't use, especially as we get older, we can't go out and eat a giant steak and a full apple pie and a full sugar Coca-Cola and come back to our desk and think that we're not going to fall into a food coma and not be a little unfocused, right? So those are all really important things that feed into our ability to focus. Now let's talk about attention management skills as it applies to technology and dive into that topic a little bit. We need to stop operating from email during the course of the day. I touched on this at the very beginning here, but I want to state it in a slightly different way. Email is not your daily roadmap. It is not a plan. And it used to be that before technology came about, we'd come into the office, we all grabbed our, back then it was the day timer. It was a little paper-based calendaring book that nearly every lawyer on the planet had, and we would meet as a team and we'd go over and we would huddle, which is a lost thing, and I think absolutely everybody should be doing team huddles as well. But we put together a game plan about what to do that particular day, and we huddled and talked about what everybody had on their plate. Today, we come in, and the very first thing we do, we barely say hi to anybody, especially these days when we're working at home, and we just maximize our email, and our calendar is our plan, and that is not a plan. Unless you're time blocking every 30-minute block on your calendar, that is not a plan. What we need is a real plan, a real roadmap for the day. What is that? That's something like this. Now I'm going to go over this in a few minutes, but this is a roadmap where we identify our priorities and then we time block our day in 30-minute increments. And of course, it's never going to go as planned, but that's okay. So think of it this way: as you get tempted, as you are tempted to check your email 74 times a day, you stop yourself and say, nope, I've got this roadmap. These are my priorities today. And this is what I have this is the contract that I've created for myself. And that is going to keep you laser focused and away from checking your email 74 times a day. So more on that in a little bit. I will say this though, I'll say one more thing on this topic and then we'll move on. That this is right now, especially during the pandemic, when we have many distractions and we're working from home, or maybe working from the office a couple days a week as well. Having a plan will help you stay focused in these crazy environments and especially the switching back and forth. And it's a good exercise actually. I've had many people tell me that they like using this plan idea, and they've shared it with other family members. So everybody is actually creating plans for themselves in the family as well as their team. And of course, that has a positive impact on everybody around you, because then everybody's got a plan and they're not interrupting you as much, and then you talk about your plans and so forth. Okay, so more on that in a little bit. Now, turn off Outlook notifications. So in Outlook, by default, these 4 notifications are turned on by default. When a new message arrives, it plays a sound. It briefly changes a mouse pointer icon in your task on your computer. It shows an envelope icon in your taskbar, and it displays a desktop alert. 4 ways, as if one isn't enough. I need 4 ways for my computer to interrupt me. Let me tell you something. This was developed from a software development perspective. This was developed in the early 90s. Think about how many emails you received in the early 90s. Maybe 10 a day if you're lucky. I guess if lucky is the right word. But that's not today. We get 150 emails a day as legal professionals. There's no place for this. This was written in the time of AOL email, when you received an email and the voice popped on and said, "You've got mail." And we actually got excited, like kind of when the Amazon delivery person comes today. Today we get an email and we just want to throw our computer against a brick wall, right? Especially when it happens 150 times a day. Turn it all off. There's no place for it. So you do that under file option mail, and then go to this mail section here, and then just uncheck these boxes. Now I know what some of you are thinking, like, gosh, I really want an interruption from very important people. So let me show you how to create a VIP list. So I'm going to pop over to Outlook, and I'm just going to show you here. I'm going to go to my fake email, so nothing embarrassing pops up on my email. Let's say I get an email from Jeff, and Jeff is a partner or a very important client. Find an email from that person, either in your inbox or deleted items. It doesn't really matter. Right-click on that email, and then go to Rules, Create Rule. And what you're going to do is just say, when I get an email from that person, display a new item alert and play a sound, and okay. And that's it. That's all you have to do. That's your VIP list, so to speak. And now when you get an email from that person, it's going to give you a new item alert and play an audible sound. Now, those are managed under File, Manage Rules and Alerts, and there's the rule. When Jeff is no longer an active client, I could just delete the rule, okay? When maybe I have a day where I'm in trial mode and I want no interruptions, nothing, all you do is just go in and just uncheck that rule, and then it turns it off, and then go back here the next day and you can turn it back on. All right, I'm just going to hit apply and then okay. Right, so again, just right click, rule, create rule, and then when from Crystal, then display a new item alert and play a sound. Manage it under File, Manage Rules and Alerts, and there they are. You can delete it or edit or just turn it off for the day. So that's what you want to do. And you know, if you decide that you're going to check emails 5 times a day, nothing's going to derail that more than having your computer interrupt you 4 different ways every single time an email arrives. Turn off your notifications also on your phone as well. And setting your phone to vibrate is probably not going to be a very successful strategy, because you know, you put it in your desk drawer and then your whole desk, you know, vibrates. It's just, that's more distracting than the beep. You know, if you're going to do that, you might as well just turn the beep on. Now I want to talk about the Pomodoro Technique. All right, so next concept in distraction management. This is a way to help you single task. And I'm just going to distill the book down to 10 seconds. You single task for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute mental clarity break. Okay, doing whatever you want to do. That's the formal description of Pomodoro. Now, here's what I recommend. First, you can go more than 25 minutes. You can go 30 minutes, you can go 45. I go 50 and then a 10-minute break. So adjust it based on what your attention span is. We know, based on the science, the Pomodoro science, that the brain tends to, you know, stray and get a little tired after 25 minutes. But that, you know, the brain's a muscle. You can expand your attention span a little bit better. So adjust it. Next, you may think about, instead of the doing anything that you want during the 5 minutes, you may want to take a real, what I call, quiet the chaos break. So in this case, what I would recommend that you do, instead of doing email or jumping over to social media and getting sucked into a debate on gun control, which we need to have, but not during your business day probably. Instead of doing that, that's not relaxing. That is not going to clear your head. What will clear your head is taking deep breaths, stepping away from your desk, going to get a drink of water, step outside, get some fresh air, you know, that type of thing, right? But step away from your workspace. Mindfulness, some people meditate at their desk for 5 minutes. So whatever it is, but don't do something that is stressful like email or jump over to social media, especially during these crazy times. Okay, so quiet the chaos. All right, let's shift gears in the last 20 minutes of the seminar here. I want to talk about now and there's, by the way, in the materials, there's so much more on distraction management. So please feel free to read those materials and dive into some of those other topics that we don't cover in this short time that we have together. All right, let's shift gears now to a time, task, and email management methodology. First step, we're going to attack the elephant in the room, which is email. So for most users, don't get their inbox down to what I call inbox 0 on a daily basis. And as crazy as that sounds, that is really the end game. That is the goal. And it is perfectly achievable at least a couple times a week, where you read your emails and you dispose of them. You get them out of your inbox and you dispose of them. So leaving then for a very short period of time, you know, 0. Wait 1 minute, 2 minutes, you're going to have 5 more emails in there. So, but what we don't want to do is use our inbox as a to-do list, and we don't want to store it. We don't want to use our inbox as an email archive tool. You could have done that in the 90s. It's a different game today. We get 150 emails a day. Managing tasks in your email is a terrible idea, especially when you get 100 to 150 emails a day. That is not the device to store them in. The device, the application to store them in, is actually a task management tool, which we're going to talk about here in a second. So, but you need to file email bankruptcy. If you have 1,000 emails in your inbox, you know, I did a seminar just yesterday where we had an individual had 15,000 emails in their inbox. Many of you have 50,000 emails in your inbox. So file email bankruptcy. That means I want you to talk to your IT person and ask them, how do I archive everything in my inbox except the last, let's say 30 days or the last 300 to 500 emails. So they're still searchable. You're not deleting them. They're still searchable. You can reach them if needed, but they're just not filed properly into the matter. Okay, so this is just a very quick way to get a fresh start on your email, and then you're left with about 300 to 500 emails, and you're going to process those, and then the ones that come in today, you're going to process those properly. How do you process them? It's a process called batch processing. And you do batch processing now, you just don't know it. You go to the grocery store, you buy groceries for a few days, you come home, put them away. Then you use them and you go back out and you get more groceries. You don't go to the grocery store and buy oranges, come home, put them away, and then go back out to the store and buy milk, come home, put it away, and go out and buy eggs, come home, put it away. That is not batch processing, right? But that's what we do with email, right? We jump into email and we just do like one at a time, and we do it 74 times a day, and that's what's unhealthy. That's what's leading us down these rabbit holes and causing us to neglect the project work and a lot of sometimes the substantive billable work that we need to do. Here's what batch processing might look like if you were to plot it out on an index card, which by the way is not a bad idea. You could do that, try to keep yourself on focus, keep it above your keyboard, so you could say, all right, I'm going to really try not to check email 70 times today. I'm going to check it 5 times today. Okay, so that's what it might look like. Every day is different, and every day is different for everybody. And so for me, I can get away with checking email 5 times a day. For you, you may not be able to. It may be 10. For some of you, it might only be 2. So everybody's different, and every day is different for everybody. So but you look at your calendar daily and you decide, all right, these are generally the times that I'm going to try to check email. And so that means you minimize your email on your other monitor. And this is what you do during that batch processing period. The 4 Ds: delete, do, delegate, delay. Delete's easy. You skim the 20 emails that landed in your inbox since the last time. Let's say I've got 20 minutes, and I've got 20 emails in there. Of the 20, 7 of them are spam or things that I can skim and delete very easily. So we always operate better from shorter lists. So we want to eliminate the noise and operate better from the shorter list. Delete. Now we're down to 13. Do. We resolve the email. We just resolve it. And the one thing I'm just going to say about the do is, if you are not organized, and if you don't have your digital information organized, you haven't figured out how to be paperless and manage digital information, and you're never going to be able to do the do efficiently, because you'll get to an email, they ask you a question, and you can't find the answer to it very quickly. And then what do? You skip the email, and then the inbox explodes. So you need to get your house in order. You need to figure out how to organize digital information. And it needs to be in one place. And everybody needs to be saving it to one place. And if you don't do that, you are not going to be able to do the do. Okay, that's do. Delegate. So in the materials, I talk about the delegated items rule or the follow-up items rule. And here's how that works. So when I send let's say I get an email and I forward it, to Dell in my office, and I say, hey, please do X, Y, and Z. Thanks, okay? And then I send this, but before I do that, what I'm gonna do is copy myself. Right now, notice my inbox has 11 right now. When I hit send, it doesn't tick up to 11, but take a look at my follow-up items here. It's set at 5 now, and it just ticked up to 6. So what that did was, when I send an email and I request information from somebody, anytime I delegate something to somebody, or I request information of somebody, I want to follow up to make sure they get it done and it doesn't get lost in la la land. So I want to have a method to hold people accountable. So there it is, follow-up items, and there's the email I just sent to Dell. So now I can check this, and I do this daily. I look at this and I say, I don't know if that's done. I forward it to Dell and I say, hey, can you give me a status update on this? Smiley face, send. And then she says, oh, yeah, you know, I forgot to do that. Thank you. And then I'm holding them accountable. Over time, the people that are used to you doing this to, they just do the stuff because they know that you hold them accountable. So the things don't fall and slip between the cracks. Now you do that through a rule that's spelled out in the materials. We don't have time to create it from scratch here, but I do want to show it to you. Here it is. It's the follow-up items rule. And here's the rule wizard, step by step. Apply this rule after the message arrives where my name is in the CC box and it's from me. Move it to the follow-up items folder. Okay, and I name it with an exclamation mark so it's alphabetized and sorted and always at the top of my inbox subfolder list. Okay, so I spell out how to do that screenshot by screenshot in the materials. It's a wonderful rule and actually one of my favorite Outlook tips. So take a look at that. Now I want to talk about delayed email real quick. When we delay email, and we can't delete, we can't delegate. We got to delay. It's going to take some time to do this. We have two flavors of delay. The first one is a temporary one. I can't get to it today, or I can't do it right now, but I can get to it later today. So just leave it in your inbox. You're going to get to it later today or tomorrow morning. No big deal. Just leave it in your inbox. The longer one is the problem, right? It's going to take a couple hours to do. I need to call a few people. I really have a deadline to schedule. So this is the one that we're going to treat a little differently. Okay, we're going to take it out of our inbox, and here's how we do it. First, we record the task, and we do that in Outlook by just simply dragging and dropping the email onto the task module, and then it converts it to a task itself. Okay, and then you can right click, drag and drop, and it will bring attachments as well. And so it converts the email to a task. It actually copies it as a task and it leaves it in your inbox still for you to resolve. If you're using Gmail, you want to use the Gmail suite. And with the Gmail suite, the Google suite, you can actually, there's a button where you can convert an email to a Google task and just do exactly the same thing, just in the Google Gmail ecosystem. Next step, you're going to record the deadline. So if you have a docketing system in your office, you want to make sure that you are respecting that docketing system, whether it's a spreadsheet or you're using something like Practice Panther, Clio, Rocket Matter, Action Step, Amicus Attorney, Time Matters, that genre of software. Okay, so you want to docket the deadline. You want to probably docket it personally on your calendar, okay? And then schedule the time to do it. And so in Outlook, just like you do with a task, you can drag and drop that same email onto your calendar, and then you create the deadline on your calendar, all right? Then you're going to turn around, since it's still in your inbox because it acts as a copy, drag and drop it on your calendar again and schedule time to do it. So if it's due next Friday, block off 2 hours on Tuesday and get it done. And so you create an appointment with yourself, in other words, to get it done. Okay, and that's a big problem. People don't do that very often. And then you're going to file the email away. And the best way to do that really is through a document management system like WorldDocs, NetDocs, OpenText, or iManage. Let me demonstrate what I mean. I get an email in from, let's say, Robert here. And so with Robert, I want to save this email into the case matter. If I leave it in my inbox or I drag and drop it into a subfolder in my inbox, nobody else in my office can see it. That's like taking, correspondence that you receive on paper, putting it in your desk drawer, shutting your desk drawer, and locking your desk drawer. You would be fired for doing that in the paper world, but electronically, that's what we do when we drag and drop into a subfolder in Outlook. So instead, what we want to do is we want to save it to a matter. So I use NetDocuments as our document management system, and here it creates a prediction using artificial intelligence of what matter it belongs to. So here I'm just going to say, yep, that belongs in the Jeff Lebowski matter, file, done. That's it. So it's filed away. Now everybody can go to the Lebowski matter in NetDocuments or WorldDocs or OpenText or iManage, or if you use a practice management system like Clio, you go then to that matter and you can see everybody's email in the office from from the client or related to that particular matter. Okay, delete, do, delegate, delay, right? And then when we delay, we create a task, we create a deadline, we schedule the deadline personally on our calendar, we schedule time to do it, we make an appointment with ourselves to do it, and then we file it away, okay? Just like in the paper world, instead of leaving it on your desk as a reminder that nobody else can reach, okay? Instead of leaving it on your desk, instead of leaving it in your inbox, in other words, you're going to file it away in the electronic matter. Now we have converted emails to tasks. Over the course of the day, by the way, out of the 150 emails that you get, you're probably creating, a dozen tasks. So it's not like you're creating 150 tasks. So now we have a bunch of tasks that we have to deal with. So let's talk about how to manage tasks. Now, I am an enormous fan of Microsoft To Do. And on the product development roadmap for Microsoft, they're getting rid of Outlook tasks and they're replacing it with Microsoft To Do, which is a much easier end user interface. So compare this. This looks like, this is beautiful, big, big text, easy to read. I can drag and drop, and this is how it looks on my iPhone and on my iPad. I can log in on any of my devices and it's available there. I can add a task or mark it off on my phone, and it marks it off here. It's absolutely wonderful. That is, and when you convert an email to a task in Outlook, it synchronizes. So that's really wonderful. That's Microsoft To Do, and I strongly recommend that you install that. It's available through Microsoft 365 on the Microsoft 365 store. So compare that to your tasks here in Outlook, and this looks like a cockpit of a 747, right? That versus this. So use Microsoft Tasks. Now, when you have all those tasks on your task list, you're probably going to have 100 of them. So you want to make sure that you engage in daily planning. So that's what this is. That's what this form is. Generally, we always operate better from shorter lists. So from your calendar and from your task list, you're going to pick you're going to make basically 3 or 4 priorities of what you want to get done that day. Now, this is the last page blank in the materials that I've given you. Okay, so you could use this and just print out 30 copies, and you can write this down. I like using paper for this because you just set it next to your keyboard, and it's out of, if it's on your computer, it's out of sight, out of mind, because you minimize it. So, but next to your keyboard, it kind of keeps you on track all day long. You could try to use your calendar and Outlook and do this as well, but whatever the tool, I really like this, and there's also alternatives like the Best Self Journal, Focus, or Panda, which is also very good. But identify 3 to 5 things over here on the left, and then over on the right, you're going to create that contract with yourself where you time block your entire day. All right. This, by the way, I've talked to many people over the years that have attended the seminar, and they tell me that this keeps them laser focused. Doesn't work for everybody, right? So, adjust the tool, or pick the tool differently. Pick a different tool, whatever works for you. But you've got to have a daily plan, and that's really the key. I know some people that write the 3 to 5 things down at 7 o'clock on their calendar, 7 a.m., and then they time block their entire day. So they're just using Outlook as their daily plan. Whatever the case, just have a daily plan. Now, finally, you want to do a once a week deep dive, and that's what this is. The same time, same place, same channel every week. I like Friday mornings from 7:30 to 8:30 before the day gets busy. This is what you're going to do. First step, you're going to look at your calendar going 2 to 3 weeks forward. And you're going to touch every single appointment and ask yourself, what do I have to do to prepare myself for this appointment? Okay, don't skim. You're not skimming. You're touching every appointment. Then go 2 to 3 weeks back. But the question is slightly different. It is, what did I promise people that I would do that I didn't do? Okay. Third, then you're going to update your task list, time block, create appointments with yourself to get those things done, right? Then you're going to look at your case list and say, am I on track, off track? It's going to remind you of tasks that you need to do. Then look at your entire task list. Every single item on your task list. Is it done? Mark it done. Is it no longer relevant? Delete it. Do I need to add things to my task list? Add them to your task list. When you look at the tasks, like, oh, that's not done, I need to create an appointment with myself to make sure they're done. So, you know, on Monday at 3 o'clock, I'm going to set aside an hour to get this done. So you're planning, right? You're planning for the week ahead of you, for the 2 weeks ahead of you. Then you're going to process your email, but you're only going to do 3 of the Ds. You're looking for tasks in your email, basically. You're going to do the delete, the delegate, and the delay, but you're not going to do the do. If you do the do, you're going to be there all day. Then you're going to gather loose papers and notes, the little sticky notes, reminders that you need to do. You're going to add those to your task list, add things to your calendar, throw those things away, or scan them and throw them away. And then finally, create a time entry report going 1 week back. Review your time entries, and again, look for tasks from your time entries that you didn't do. While you're there, go ahead and proofread your time entries and give them to your billing person, and also look for missing time entries. Okay, so that is it. That is. I know that's a lot. It's a lot to cram in. That should take you, by the way, about an hour. There's a lot there, and there's actually a lot more in the materials. I highly encourage you to take a look at those. I want to thank all of you for attending today. Hopefully you picked up some good information, and again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions at all. Thanks so much, and good luck with your time management.